When morning came, Mr. Gregg was the first to wake up. He opened his eyes. He was about to put out a hand for his watch to see the time, but his hand wouldn't come out. "That's funny," he said. "Where is my hand?" He lay still wondering what was up. Maybe he had hurt that hand in some way. He tried the other hand. That wouldn't come out either. He sat up. Then, for the first time, he saw what he looked like. He gave a yell and jumped out of bed. Mrs. Gregg woke up, and when she saw Mr. Gregg standing there on the floor, she gave a yell too, for he was now a tiny little man. He was maybe as tall as the seat of the chair, but no taller, and where his arms and had been, he had a pair of duck's wings instead. But, cried Mrs. Gregg, going purple in the face. "My dear man, what's happened to you? What's happened to both of us, you mean?" shouted Mr. Gregg. It was Mrs. Gregg's turn now to jump out of bed. She ran to look at himself in the glass, but she was not tall enough to see into. She was even smaller than Mr. Gregg, and she too have got wings instead of arms. "Ow, ow, ow, ow!" sobbed Mrs. Gregg. "This is witch's work," said Mr. Gregg, and both of them started running around the room, flapping their wings. A minute later, Philip and William burst in. The same thing had happened to them. They had wings, no arms, and they were really tiny. They were about as big as robins. "Mama, Mama, Mama!" chirped Philip. "Look, Mama, we can fly!" And they flew up into the air. "Come down at once," said Mrs. Gregg. "You're much too high." But before she could say another word, Philip and William had flown right out the window. Mr. and Mrs. Gregg ran to the window and looked out. The two tiny boys were now high up in the sky. Then Mrs. Gregg said to Mr. Gregg, "Do you think we could do that, my dear?" "I don't see why not," said Mr. Gregg said. "Why not?" Mr. Gregg said. "Come on, let's try." Mr. Gregg began to flap his wings hard, and all at once up he went. Then Mrs. Gregg did the same. "Help!" she cried as she started going up. "Save me! Come on," said Mr. Gregg. "Don't be afraid." So out the window they flew, far up into the sky, and it did not take them long to catch up with Philip and William. Soon the whole family was flying around and around together. "Oh, isn't it lovely?" cried William. "I've always wanted to know what it feels like to be a bird." "Your wings are not getting tired, are they, dear?" Mr. Gregg asked Mrs. Gregg. "Not at all," Mrs. Gregg said. "I could go on forever." "Hey, look down there," said Philip. "Somebody is walking in our garden." They all looked down, and there below them in their own garden, they saw four enormous wild ducks. The ducks were as big as men, and what is more, they had great long arms like men instead of wings. The ducks were walking. The ducks were walking in a line to the door of the drawers at Greg's house, swinging their arms and holding their beaks high up the air. "Stop!" called the tiny Mr. Gregg, flying down low over their heads. "Go away, that's my house." The ducks looked up and quacked. The first one put out a hand and opened the door of the house and went in. The others went in after him. The door shut. The dregs flew down and sat on the wall near the door. Mrs. Gregg began to cry. Oh dear, she sobbed. They have taken our house. What shall we do? We have no place to go. Even the boys began to cry a bit now. We will be eaten by cats and foxes in the night, said Philip. I want to sleep in my own bed, said William. Now then, said Mr. Gregg, it isn't any good crying. That won't help us. Shall I tell you what we are going to do? What? They said. Mr. Gregg looked at them and smiled. We are going to build a nest. A nest, they said. Can we do that? We must do it, said Mr. Gregg. We've got to have somewhere to sleep. Follow me. They flew up to a tall tree, and right at the top of it, Mr. Gregg chose the place for the nest. Now we want sticks, he said. Lots and lots of little sticks. I'll figure all of you and find them and bring them back here. But we have no hands, said Philip. Then use your mouths. Mrs. Gregg and the children flew off. Soon they were back carrying sticks in their mouths. Mr. Gregg took the sticks and started to build the nest. More, he said. I want more and more and more sticks. Keep going. The nest began to grow. Mr. Gregg was very good at making the sticks stick together. After a while, he said, that's enough sticks. Now I want leaves and feathers and things like that to make the inside nice and soft. The building of the nest went on and on. It took a long time, but at last it was finished. Try it, said Mr. Gregg, hopping back. He was very pleased with his work. Oh, isn't it lovely? Cried Mrs. Gregg, going into it and sitting down. I feel I might lay an egg any moment. The others all got in beside her. How warm it is, said William, and what fun to be living so high up, said Philip. We may be small, but nobody can hurt us up here. But what about food, said Mrs. Gregg. We haven't had a thing to eat all day. That's right, Mr. Gregg said. So we will now fly back to the house and go in by and open a window and get the tin of biscuits when the dogs aren't looking. Oh, we will be picking to bites by those dirty great dogs, cried Mrs. Gregg. We shall be very careful, my dear, my love, said Mr. Gregg, and off they went. But when they got to the house, they found all the windows and doors closed. There was no way in. Just look at the beastly dog cooking on my stove, said Mrs. Gregg as she flew past the kitchen window. How dare she? And look at that one holding my lovely gun, shouted Mr. Gregg. One of it is laying in my bed, yelled William, looking into a top window. And one of them is playing in my electric train, said Philip. Oh dear, said Mrs. Gregg. They have taken over our whole house. We shall never get it back. And what are we going to eat? I will not eat worms, said Philip. I would rather die. Or slug, said William. Mrs. Gregg took the two boys under her wings and hugged them. Don't worry, she said. I can mince it all up very fine, and you won't even know the difference. Lovely slug burgers, delicious worm burgers. No, no, said William. Never, said Philip. Disgusting, said Mr. Gregg. Just because we have wings, we couldn't have to eat bird food. We shall eat apples instead. Our trees are full of them. Come on. So they flew up to an apple tree. But to eat an apple without holding it in your hands, it is not at all easy. Every time you try to get your teeth into it, it just pushed away. In the end, they were able to get a few small bites each, and then it began to get dark, so they all flew back to the nest and lay down to sleep. It must have been at about this time that I back in my own house, picked up the telephone, and tried to call Philip. I want to see if the family was alright. Hello, I said. Quack, said a voice at the other end. Who is it? I asked. Quack, quack. Philip, I said. Is that you? Quack, 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 quack. Oh, stop it, I said. Then there came a very funny noise. It was like a bird laughing. I put down the telephone quickly. Oh, that's Magic-Finger, I cried. What has it done to my friend? That night, while Mr. and Mrs. Gregg and Philip and William were trying to get some sleep up in the high nest, a great wind began to blow. The tree rocked from side to side, and everyone, even Mr. Gregg, was afraid that the nest would fall down. Then came the rain. It rained and rained, and the water ran into the nest, and they all got as wet as could be. And oh, it was a bad, bad night. At least the morning came, and with it the warm sun. Well, said Mrs. Gregg, thank goodness that's over. I never want to sleep in a nest again. She got up and looked over the side. Help! She cried. Look down there. What is it, my love? Said Mr. Gregg. He stood up and peeped over the side. He got the surprise of his life. On the ground below them stood the four enormous ducks, as tall as men, and three of them were holding a guns in their hands. One had Mr. Gregg's gun, one had Philip's gun, and one had William's gun. The guns were all pointing right up at the nest. No, 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 called out Mr. and Mrs. Gregg, both together. Don't shoot, please don't shoot. Why not? Said one of the ducks. It was the one who wasn't holding a gun. You are always shooting at us. Oh, but not the same, said Mr. Gregg. We are allowed to shoot dogs. Who allows you? Asked the duck. We allow each other, said Mr. Gregg. Very nice, said the duck. And now we are going to allow each other to shoot you. I would have loved to have seen Mr. Gregg's face just then. Oh, please, cried Mrs. Gregg. My two little children are up here with us. You wouldn't shoot my children. Yesterday you shot my children, said the duck. You shot all 6 of my children. I'll never do it again, said Mr. Gregg. Never, never, never. Do you really mean that? Asked the duck. I do mean it, said Mr. Gregg. I'll never shoot another duck as long as I live. That is not good enough, said the duck. What about deer? I'll do anything you say if you will only put down those guns, cried Mr. Gregg. I'll never shoot another duck or another deer or anything else again. Will you give me your word on that? Said the duck. I will, said Mr. Gregg. Will you throw away your guns? Asked the duck. I will break them into tiny beats. And Mr. Gregg and said Mr. Gregg. "Never again need you be afraid of me or my family." "Very well," said the dog. "You may now come down. And by the way, may I congratulate you on the nest for a first. It's pretty good." Mr. and Mrs. Gregg and Philip and William hopped out of the nest and flew down. Then all at once everything went black before their eyes, and they couldn't see. At the same time, a funny feeling came over them all, and they heard a great wind blowing in their ears. Then the black that was before their eyes turned to blue, to green, to red, and then to gold, and suddenly there they were, standing in lovely bright sunshine in their own garden, near their own house, and everything was back to normal once again. "Our wings have gone," cried Mr. Gregg, "and our arms have come back, and we are not tiny any more," laughed Mrs. Gregg. "Oh, I'm so glad!" Philip and William began to dance about with joy.